In the tunnel.
In the tunnel.
In the tunnel. You're listening to In the Tunnel.
Hello and welcome to In the Tunnel. My name is Jeremy Eskovitz.
And I'm Sean.
And again, like we said, this is In the Tunnel. This is going to be a podcast, a sports show. We're probably going to focus on hockey. That's the upcoming playoff season. And because the NBA isn't a real sport, at least not in our eyes, we're going to focus on hockey as the playoffs start in a few days. We are two friends from childhood. We're both from New Jersey. I'm currently in Wilmington, North Carolina. Sean is in New Jersey. We're going to do this remote. Sean and I are probably the least qualified people to be doing a hockey-based podcast, but that's only because, well, for me, I never laced up a pair of ice skates. Sean has just recently learned how to ice skate, and between us, we have a combined 0 games of hockey played on an ice surface. So this should go great. I think we have pretty much all the criteria of great sports podcasters without being associated with ESPN or any other large company. And the fact that we're doing this out of our own bedrooms is just even better for the fact that we're starting at the bottom, really. The experience that we do have, I am someone who has worked 3 radio stations over the course of 5 years, including in the New York City market. And Sean has one thing going for him that pretty much nobody else has. And that is he has A, microphone, and B, he knows someone with 5 years radio experience. So this was really an obvious choice for choosing a co-host. Although, truth be told, if we can be serious for a second, I don't think I would have chosen anybody else anyway. So, that being said, we're here to try to deliver a sports talk show focusing on hockey. And as the year goes on, if we can stick to this, hopefully we'll touch on more sports. If not, we'll try to just focus on hockey. And worst case scenario, we just give up entirely, which, well, again, we'll see how it goes. That being said, we're excited to broadcast this to a projected audience somewhere in the tens of people to start out. But it should be fun, and we're going to try to grow this and see what we can do. You have anything to add to Sean?
Yeah, so I got nothing to add. Yeah, so Jeremy there's told you our experience, so I was thinking let's just jump right into it.
All right, that sounds good. We have assembled a list of topics. We're going to try not to go straight through them as a list. We're going to try to keep this a little loose, a little humorous, have fun with it. This is the first time we've done no rehearsal. So, however this goes, either good or bad, it's going to get published. And really, it's grow as you go. I think we talked earlier, we decided that we were going to start with the NHL awards races, just a little discussion on that, and then think we're going to start talking about playoffs after that. So,
Yeah.
without further ado, let's get into it. As we diehard hockey fans know, that there's a plethora of trophies. The President's Vezina, Hart, Calder, anything that Ovechkin can win, because really at this point the cup is off the market for his career. So really, let's just start with it. Which one do you want to go with first, Sean?
So I was thinking let's start with the Vezina Trophy because I think there's like a couple of good candidates there. I'm gonna bring up the one Pecorine. I think he's like a shoo-in for this year's Vesna due to his team winning the Presidents and him putting up really, really good numbers. Like has been really consistent this past 2 years, and I just think it's his time to win.
Yeah, I think strongly agree. I think that the Predators kind of floated under the radar for part of this year because of how well the Knights were doing out in Vegas, and then all of a sudden we went from Vegas has the best record and there it was, all of a sudden the Predators had clinched, but it speaks volumes with the fact that they had to have Mike Fisher come back, although they didn't really have to, but he chose to. I'm sure they had a plethora of injuries. You can't rely on PK Subban, Roman Josi, and all the defensemen to score all your points. Pekka Rinne, just being what he is, consistent over the past few years, is the brick wall in front of the net. The only question is will he have that big streak that he had last year in the playoffs?
But I mean, even then, like he put up really good numbers. I think his numbers like overall were the best in the NHL this year. And like the only two goalies that I could see competing with him are Gibson from the Ducks and Hellebuck from the Jets. Yet Gibson was down for quite a while, so he had the less games of the two, and Hellebuck had the most games played for a goalie this season. And his numbers were, I think, third. So, I mean, even though the team in front of him does speak volumes, right? He has like four top pairing defensemen in those six guys. It doesn't take away for what he's done. So, I mean, I think it's just his year, and I mean, I last year he did great too. It was really close. So I just think it's his year to actually win something.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that he's the strongest candidate of the three that you mentioned. I think Hellebuck, you gotta give some credit because I mean, look at the year that Winnipeg had, and the fact of the matter that since they went from Atlanta back to Winnipeg, they never had a year as strong as this year. Uh, but it, the nice storyline doesn't win the trophy. The fact that you mentioned that John Gibson had been down for a while, I think that worked in his favor because I think keeping an eye on him, he's probably been one of the more streaky goaltenders in the league. We've all seen years where goaltenders have really strong starts. They make all-star games, and then next year they are in the minors because, well, they just lost their mojo. They lost their belief in being able to play well. And I think John Gibson kind of fits that mold. I think, wasn't it last year that in the playoffs they ended up benching him and playing Bernier, the Ducks' backup, because Gibson was just sloppy. Kind of reminds me of how Marc-Andre Fleury was playing for a few years in the playoffs with the Penguins. It was just not good. You could just tell that he had no composure. And I think really Gibson benefits from the fact that, like, I don't feel that all the pressure was on him this year, but he's one of those candidates where you have to really wait for the playoffs to see how good of a candidate he really is. I just don't see him winning it either way if he picks up a cup at the end of the summer, at the beginning of the summer or not. Just because I don't trust that he's consistent enough to do it yet.
I
And it's a
mean,
shame.
I mean,
But
I wish that the playoffs. I mean, the playoffs don't have like any impact on these trophies anyway. But like,
right,
it
and I think you kind of have to have it that way if a team isn't making the playoffs because let's say a goaltender has a really good year on a bad team that just can't score goals. It's like he doesn't have that extra 16 so games, whatever it be, to prove his worth. But at the same time, if you're in the playoffs and you absolutely choke and just break down, I think it should weigh against you. I don't think that you should. It's not like the preseason where oh, okay, it doesn't count. It very much should count against you. I just don't know. But getting back to it, I think that Pecorine is the front runner. He kind of reminds me of kind of how like Braden Holtby had those 2 years where he was just absolutely on fire. Every time you tune into a national broadcast, it brought up that he was a finalist for the award, and I just don't know that Pecorine is competing against anybody else that's really on the same tier here. I think you're looking at like spots 1 and 2 for Pecorine. I think he's just got that much of a lead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but then again, like, his entire defensive core is also in front of him, so people could say it's like a lot easier for him because he has 4 like top pairing defensemen in front of him night in, night out. So
Yeah, I think the argument could be made for that, but at the end of the day, they're not the ones who are stopping all the pucks. The fact of the matter, too, you have to remember that these top pairing defensemen, we've heard comparisons of how, like, they're all very offensive in terms of their skill set. They all have the ability to play both ways. They're not all defensive specialists, so to speak, at least as far as I'm aware of. So it's kind of hard to say that, oh, I'm going to take away from Pecorine because of their 4 offensive defensemen.
yeah, but I mean, you could make the argument that because Saros performed quite well in front of this behind the same defensive core, that they do have some impact on it, because Saros played almost as good as Rene, but I mean, Rene gets the nomination because of the games played. He was the starter, so.
And I think because of the reputation, Renee's been performing on this highest level for a while now and has had that starting nod for a while, whereas Saros, it's sample size. Like, what they give him is what he gets, and he makes the best of his opportunity. But we don't know if it's kind of like the Antti Ranta situation with the Rangers, where him relieving Lundqvist was him playing really well. And then once he gets the starter's role, not that he was going to change things out in Phoenix single-handedly, but
he played really well in
he did,
Phoenix.
but like, we're not talking about him being a finalist.
Well, no, but then again, he has no team around him either. So, I mean, there is a semblance of you do need a team around you, like, And he did, I mean, he was hurt for quite a while, too, because they played the first, like, 12 games? It took them for a win till he finally came back, so there's that, too.
This is true. I mean, I can't knock you for that. And just the fact of the matter, like you said, it's hard to win games in Phoenix. It's just amazing that one of the best players in the league is from the Arizona area because of, like, I mean, look, if it's kind of like being a Pirates fan when you're growing up, it's like, how do you not give up on this at some point? So, I mean, kudos to Austin Matthews just on a quick shout out, but I'm not. Antti Ranta, I think, very good goaltender, but I think next year may be his best year to show his worth. With a year under his belt of being the true starter, I think this year was kind of like prove that you were worth the trade.
But to be fair, the last half of the year, since January 1st, he's been probably the best goaltender overall in the NHL. I'm serious. Like, they went from being 31st to now being, like 27th in the league. That's a 4-place jump. That's a lot for, like,
Yeah,
having
just
like
to put on one
30
guy.
points, right?
Yeah.
But he was one of the best goaltenders in the last half of the season, starting in January 1st.
It's just a shame that he's in the situation that he is. There's really nothing else to say. It's hard to just stay on topic when we're talking Arizona or Phoenix Coyotes of any of any means. It's just not. It's like, what can you say that is good other than Antti Ranta?
Yeah.
But I think we've probably talked about goaltenders for a few minutes here, so let's switch it up. I think we're looking at the Calder uh, Trophy. We had Clayton Keller, Charlie McAvoy, Matthew Barzal,
Yeah.
and Nico Hischier as our main candidates. I think you put Hischier on our list. I think McAvoy probably has had the most hype out of anybody just because he came out just straight on fire from the second that he was called up, and he really just hasn't stopped. I mean, he has a memorabilia partnership with Barstool Sports already. This guy's 19 years old, selling hats with his initials on it. So it's just crazy amount of hype that he's had. But I think that, in my opinion, Barzal has probably had the best year on the worst team.
Yeah, he has point per game. He's a little over a point per game, I'm pretty sure.
Which
And
is
that's
crazy.
unheard of for a rookie since Malkin, right? So, like, I mean, I think he's a shoo-in, but I think, like, honorable mentions are Kyle Connor from Winnipeg and Hischier from the Devils. Like, sure, I mean, he's the Devils' second leading scorer, like, point producer
Yeah,
on.
of course, buying Taylor Hall. Because,
Yeah, but that's still 40 some points, right?
yeah, that's pretty good for a rookie.
50
I think.
points he had, 20 goals in the first season. I think he did admirably for being shoved into a first line center spot at 18.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about Nolan Patrick right now. We're talking about Nico Hischier, which I think, I don't know if Nolan Patrick ever really stayed up with Philly or even got his chance, but
Yeah,
I
he
think
did.
that speaks to the talent that the Devils have in the lineup right now and how bright the future is going to be for them. I just don't know that he competes from the stats tables
Yeah,
to
I
some of these
mean,
other candidates
I
this
feel
year.
like Barzal's going to win specifically for point per game, and he sure did a lot of things that aren't really on stats, right? Because he was thrown into every situation as a first line center. He's defensive zone face off, offensive zone, and all these different things that he had to do. And like even you mentioned Nolan Patrick, like he was hurt for a while, but he came back. He didn't really get the opportunities because Giroux and all those guys still were healthy most of the season, so he didn't really have to come above a second line center for a little bit. So it's more of he didn't get all the opportunities. I still think he's a good player and he just needs some more time to show himself. But
Yeah, I'd be biased Penguins fan logic here. And by the way, we forgot to get into the fact that Sean is a diehard Devils fan. I'm a diehard Penguins fan from family roots. So if we ever get to the point where we have people commenting or reaching out to us, not a bandwagon fan, family roots.
yeah.
And Sean's been through New Jersey thick and thin. This was when we grew up and like, oh, the Devils were in the playoffs or in the finals for a few years. Uh, but getting back to it is like, I think that you're right. It absolutely is crazy. But I think my question is with Barzal, you have Tavares, who he's about to be a free agent. And my question is do you throw as much money as you can to Tavares and say, here, stay? And he says, okay, I'll stay for a few more years. I really want to commit. And you obviously have Barzal for a few more years of control, but you're kind of working with an upcoming Tavares 2.0 contract situation once he's up and his deal is up. So my question for you is, do you build around Barzal and say, Tavares, I'm not sure that you had the loyalty, the dedication, like, because
I
you've been
think
kind of saying that you might have wanted out for a year or two now. Or
no, no way. You have to do your fans justice and attempt to keep Tavares. You have to. He he was on board at the beginning of the season when you guys the Islanders were going for the Belmont Park and all of that, and he was giving it his all in the middle of the season when you guys were still doing okay and could make the playoffs.
Mhm.
And then like your entire team just fell apart. So you can, as the Islanders organization, they have to at least attempt to keep Tavares, but I don't know if I really doubt Tavares taking that deal, because Tavares is at a
Yeah.
point where he wants a playoff competitor, but he's also going to want time, like term and money.
Yeah. I think that Tavares has been very patient, and I think that he has shown the leadership qualities that they wanted for the Islanders captain and star to have. But at some point, it's kind of like, well, you know, am I in this for the organization and the organization isn't in it for the players on the ice, or is everybody just on the same page and we just can't do it? In either way, it seems like Tavares is frustrated and time is running out on that hourglass.
I mean, again, I think if I were the Islanders, I'd have to try and keep Tavares. But if I don't get Tavares, you got to build around your new guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I just
And you
don't
have
know
so
that
many.
Tavares is going to stay regardless. Like you said, I just don't know that he hasn't had enough.
Oh no, I think like depending on if if the Islanders can show that they're still willing to like early in the offseason make some moves to improve their team and still be able to sign Tavares, then he might come back. But he's going to go into free agency. I don't see why he won't just let July 1st come around and go into free agency. So,
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard to just, we'll touch on this for a couple seconds more before we switch to something else. But I think it's hard to say that it's mutual in terms of loyalty between the organization and him. And I don't mean this 100% as a joke, but it kind of turns out to be one when you look at the Islanders. It's like John Tavares has put in a lot of loyalty to a franchise that has really struggled to actually have a home arena for the past 5 years.
yeah.
It's like we're flirting with going to Hartford, Connecticut. Maybe you should go back to the Coliseum in Long Island. It's like, if you can't address and keep some fans satisfied as to where you're even going to play, how are you going to convince your star to stay? And I don't mean that to like rhyme and be poetic, but like really, how do you get him to stay? What is your PowerPoint presentation in the summer in the conference room that says this is where you belong?
I mean, to be fair, they did go out and win the Belmont Park, and they have a home now that they can build. To be
That's
fair,
true, but
that
it
is
doesn't
one thing.
mean that Tavares is going to be there when the stadium is built.
Yeah, I mean, because they are going back to the Coliseum next year for half their games. I'm pretty sure that was the news. So
Yeah,
they will be
so
playing.
breaking news: two home stadiums next year for the Islanders.
Yeah,
That
basically.
talk about commitment and talk about being able to be consistent with a pattern. It's like we just can't commit to one, so we're flirting with two.
Yeah, basically. So I mean, yeah, they have a pretty big thing. I think you just, if you're the Islanders this offseason, you're trying to build more, and if those pieces entice Tavares enough to say that he can get to the playoffs next year, or even like he can compete next year and he sees a direction where they get to the playoffs consecutively in the years after, then try to work it out. But you can't, like, at this point, if you're the Islanders, you're not like, oh, we're going to re-sign Tavares, because that's not. I'm sorry, you're delusional if you think that it's a shoe-in to happen.
Yeah. But I think we kind of went off on a little tangent here. I think getting back to the Calder, I think we agree that Barzal is the front runner for it.
Yeah, I mean, because Barzal has a point per game. The next person is Clayton Keller on the Coyotes, and he's not going to win it.
Yeah, is kind of, well, actually, wasn't he on the Ducks?
Clayton Keller, he's a Coyotes.
Oh, same color scheme.
Not at all, but
West Coast hockey on the East Coast time zone. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
We might have to edit that one out.
Yeah, but I mean, so I think like again for the Calder, I think it's Barzal, Keller, Heischer, and Connor,
Hmm.
Kyle Connor on the Winnipeg Jets. But I mean, I think that the voters are going to see stats over like game impact, so they're going to choose Barzal. And I mean, yeah, I'm fine with him winning it. So
All right, so let's go quick one versus the other here. You have Calder candidates or your Calder class from last year versus this year. Who are you taking?
last year,
Yeah, I think that's the obvious choice.
yeah, I
But
mean, like, there's no way I would choose like as much as this year. There's a okay. So the thing with this year is there are a lot of good rookies, right?
hmm.
Like, I mean, if we specifically look at like the teams that we are diehard fans of, right? Like, you know, on the Devils, there's Heischer, Bratt, Coleman, Butcher, right? Those are all rookies this year. That is, and they all performed super well at the different things they did, right?
Right.
So like, as much as this year's Calder like race has a diverse or a lot of candidates who do a lot of different things. It's like again, they're not all scorers. Like Barzal's a point per game, but he sure has worked into his game a lot of the defensive and other aspects necessary, and doesn't necessarily hit a point per game. And then you have the power play specialist in Butcher, and you have a PK guy in Coleman this year for the Devils. Like if I'm just talking about them specifically, like this Calder class, like if it wasn't all about stats, it could be very diverse. And it,
Yeah.
but the
I
thing
think you have a
is,
lot of guys who have a niche, but they don't have the all-around star player. That
exactly. And the thing is, last year though, like you had stars. Like it doesn't
you
matter.
had Line, you had Matthews, you had
Like right there. That's why I take the
yeah,
last year's Calder class. Like right there. Like those are star players.
yeah, absolutely. I think that
But
was
if I was like building a team and I had to choose a class, I would choose this year's class. But if I'm like saying like because if I'm building a team, I have everybody in this year's call like rookie class.
I see what you're saying because I think this year's team you have, like I said, niche players. You have team chemistry that everybody knows their roles. Last year you kind of have like star powers. Like there's only one puck to go around. Whose ego is going to blow first?
Right, exactly. So like I mean, again, if I would choose last year's Calder race because they're so dynamic with the puck last year. This year we didn't have many people like dynamic with the puck like a Matthews or a Line. Like Keller had his moments of being really dynamic with the puck. Barzal had his moments, but those they weren't to the Matthews and Line level.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think what and the other thing you have going for this year's team, if you were to choose, is I'm pretty sure Matt Murray is still a rookie. I don't know if it's true or not. Obviously, he's not a rookie anymore. But like, come on, 2 rings is like that dude might just never shed the rookie status because he's had so many concussions.
Eh.
so, so Matt Murray 3 times. Let's start a campaign on that one. Art Ross Trophy, I think we all know.
I mean, McDavid has
We're
the
gonna
most
hand it
points.
to McDavid.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
mean,
shame that he couldn't lead his team against the strong conference rival of their own GM. Um, so really, it was a shame. Blessing in disguise, hopefully for the future, and I don't know.
okay,
Maybe
no,
in the off season, instead of training on getting better at being hockey players, they take some finance classes and shed some of these contracts.
real talk though. I don't think you can successfully run a team where two players are taking up a quarter of your cap space.
Yeah, yeah, not good on a 25-man roster. I mean, let's just do the simple math here. That's a lot of cap space that you're coloring in, saying,
As much
okay,
as
we don't need it.
as much as McDavid deserves to earn 12.5 million a year, and Drysaitel, I mean, with McDavid, he can make cases for 8 million a year. I don't think I'd rather have one player at 8, one player at 6, even if they're not as dynamic. I can those other roles, even though we were talking about those niche roles in the Calder, like they don't make as much money, but if I could find that player who just stands out at his niche role and pay him a little bit more to make sure I have him, instead of wasting a quarter of my cap on two players who most of the time needed to play together last year and even this year in order to produce.
Yeah, I have no idea. This is kind of like the reverse of how things work when you're under Ray Shiro, as you know, and I know. Both our teams had Shiro as a GM at some point. It's kind of like, well, what do you value? Because this dude obviously doesn't value both the draft and signing and being smart. It's like you have to pick your poison. And I just feel like the GM in Edmonton is like, okay, look, we built through the draft and got pretty lucky with it the past couple of years. And look, we signed some big names. So I didn't do all these things at once, but I did them one at a time and watch them all burn now.
I'm sorry, but you also decided to sign Milan Lucic for $6 million a year for I don't know how long. So you're
and Milan Lucic, who's on the back end of his career too.
His career's pretty dead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
One skate off the rink.
Basically, like I mean, if you can make a case for him making like $2 million in a year.
He's a young old Jerome Gillen without the ability to score the puck a lot.
Yeah.
So really, he's just old.
But like, yeah, that's my like big problem with the Oilers. Like, they got lucky in the draft, and then they had to pay these players, and it just went downhill because can't build around two players. It take 20 million out of an 80 million cap, basically.
Yeah, I feel like they're the team who will probably overpay for James Neal or David Perron at some point.
The problem is they can't. Like,
well,
again,
not anymore, but
you have 23 players to fill in 60 million of cap space, right?
Yeah.
Milan Lucic is one player who's taking 6 million of cap space, so let's make that number worse. You have 22 players to fill in 54 million of cap space. It's not getting any better.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I think, dare to say, it's time for all the diehard Edmonton fans to form a peaceful protest on this GM because you kind of need a GM who, I don't know, knows the business. You can't play the whole let's make everybody happy kind of approach.
No, and I mean like because if I were in Edmonton's situation, right? Like, I mean, McDavid is a generational player. You want him on your team. I understand that, and he deserves to make $12.5 million a year. I completely understand that. But at that point, you have to say, was it really worth paying Draisaitl $8 million to basically become McDavid's line mate? Because now one line is $20 million.
Yeah,
and your scoring's not spread out.
And I understand that you have to keep McDavid in Edmonton. That just, because as long as you have him, you have a shot. But I feel like that contract is still bloated. I think it's still more than it should be. I mean, the fact of the matter is McDavid right now is making more money than Crosby ever did and probably is making now. I'm pretty sure Crosby's current deal is $87 million total.
I think he was making an average value of like $8 million or $9 million, was it?
So we're talking McDavid is making just under $4 million more than Crosby.
I don't know, but I mean, yeah, his contract was the biggest, like overall. But I mean, if you want to talk about big stupid contracts, you're gonna go back a couple years to Ilya Kovalchuk. But we're not talking about that.
We're not talking about 17-year contracts or whatever it was.
15-year, $100 million top-heavy contract.
Yeah, I mean, that's just not smart. But hey, you didn't have Ray Shero at the time. You actually had a GM you thought was competent, so.
Well, no, I think Lou Lamoriello is competent. I just think that was one mistake, and then his draft before we got rid of him was another mistake. Like, you're gonna make mistakes, and sometimes you just need a new face. Like Lamoriello's doing a great job in Toronto, and I mean, sure, he got lucky with getting the first pick for Austin Matthews, right?
Yeah, and
But
getting Marner and
I
all
mean
those other guys.
yeah, that's part of the draft. Like the only lucky part of the draft was Austin Matthews, right? The rest of it he acquired and drafted, right? He's good. I mean,
Yeah,
everybody
he
makes
worked a
mistakes.
little Bill Belichick magic.
Everybody makes mistakes, but I mean, we all just needed a change of scenery. But
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
like McDavid's winning the Ross, but his team is going nowhere, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, like that brand new stadium you built, you might as well pack the seats in the first 2 months because after that, you're just not gonna like why you bought tickets.
I mean, you can go see McDavid score one of his 110 points in the season.
Or hey, hope for the All Star game. Hope that you guys eventually get to host it instead of them putting it in Columbus every 5-6 years, because that's where you get ratings.
Yeah, Minnesota, you get ratings too.
Well, Minnesota makes sense. I'm not sure about Columbus. I mean, that's not even Cleveland.
Oh boy.
And we've reached that part of the show where we're now bashing cities. So I think we found that we're going to have segments on this show. Bashing basketball and bashing cities. Right now, our top two.
Yeah, basically you just bashed a
We
city
can't
that doesn't
do-
have hockey in it anyway, so
True.
aside from AHL, right? So
Well, mistake by the lake. Cleveland, Ohio. But really, I mean, we can't talk about trophies once they've already been handed out. So this is our forte coming to fruition here.
yeah, so I mean, the other trophy that's already decided is the Rocket Maurice Richard, right? It's going to
Rocket
Ovechkin.
Richard, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
so
going to Ovechkin. It's the only thing with silver in it that he's ever going to win. He's won it a number of times, I think, which is great
Yeah.
because that's the only pinnacle that he apparently knows how to reach other than the second round. So
yeah, and
really,
let it be known that he only hit 49 goals this year.
let it be no solid defense by the Devils will keep you from 50 goals.
That game was not that good.
Okay, soft, solid defense.
Yeah, and starting Corey Schneider.
Make a compromise. We're gonna play. Let's make a deal.
Sitting our number one defenseman in Sammy Vatanen. A bunch of these things. But he almost made 50, and that would have been. I think that's good for the league. Like having 50 is a hard number to reach, and it's showing, and it's good.
It is because Crosby won it last year with only 40, and that felt like it was a low number when he won it.
Yeah, no, that was definitely a low number when he won it. But this
Yeah.
year it was Line and Ovechkin basically till the end. Like Line fell off the last 3 games, but like he was only like 2 goals behind most leading into the end of the season. So
Yeah, well, Ovechkin he's kind of like, and I hate to say this after saying that the NBA I don't feel is a real sport, but he's kind of like your Carmelo Anthony. I mean, the guy is a very solid player who you will never see him on that top podium. Unlike Carmelo Anthony has the Olympic gold medals that Ovechkin doesn't even have. So
let it be known that the Olympic athletes from Russia won the Olympic gold medal, not even the country of Russia.
But let it also be known that Ovechkin was not on that team.
Yeah, the only one to the Triple Crown is Datsuk? Pavel Datsuk?
I mean, he stayed in the league long enough that it has to make sense.
Well, no, I know he had a Stanley Cup. I'm pretty sure he had a World Championship, and he just got the gold with the Olympic athletes from Russia.
Sense.
So
Makes sense. Figure that Kovalchuk could have been one if he ever had a Stanley Cup too.
I mean, like that's the other thing. I'm so salty about him leaving because we made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, and then he's just like,
I'm not even gonna give it
nope,
one more year.
I'm fucking out.
Like we climbed the mountain, we just didn't reach the top of the mountain, and now I'm out. It's like, we can see the peak from here, but like the bottom is like I can slide down that, and he just went for the slide.
I literally went through rock bottom with his team for 5-6 years. So,
But hey, positive side, a little spin zone action is like at least your team didn't almost relocate.
I mean, I don't think a team's gonna relocate while Bettman is still the.
Yeah, yeah. I remember watching a Penguins documentary, and it was like Bettman and Lemieux were like so tight, and that kept them in Pittsburgh. But like Kansas City was really close to having the Penguins. Like, make no mistake about it. If it wasn't for Bettman saying like, "Oh, I'm with Mario," it was going to be in Kansas City very quickly.
I mean, if you look, the Devils started their NHL. The organization started in Kansas City or Colorado, moved to Kansas City, right, and then got out of there. I think it would have been close to the same happening with Pittsburgh. So.
Yeah, and now we're talking about like we don't have to worry about that now. We're very lucky to be part of fan bases outside of Canada that have stability out and are not teams in the original six who definitely aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, like I mean, obviously, like the Rangers and those
The
original
Bruins,
six teams,
yeah, they're not
and
going anywhere.
the Red Wings, they have stability.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean the Coyotes they haven't geographically moved, but they've changed their hometown name twice from Arizona to Phoenix and back to Arizona in like the past 20 years.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
like we have so few fans that we've encompassed the whole state and we still don't have enough.
yeah. But yeah, so the only trophy that Ovechkin will ever hold up is the Rocket Richard Trophy, so he can have it.
I mean, it's about the same as half off with a coupon at the grocery store. In the grand scheme of his career and how it's played out, it might as well be like climbing Everest.
I do think he is the best player in the NHL that does not have a cup right now.
Oh, okay. I'm perfectly fine with admitting that. I think that he's probably not only because there are players in their prime that it's like, because you could say the same thing about Connor McDavid. It's like he doesn't have a ring, but he's
young.
He's young.
He has the chance.
So for factoring in the fact that Ovechkin is like he's on that back end of his career, then like this is kind of like
I mean,
Jerome
he just eclipsed
McGinley
1,000 games, so
yeah. So that's what he has going for him. And like, make no mistake about it, Ovechkin has had his chances, but the inability to cash in is just a shame. It's like, how many game sevens in the second round do you need to get to know how to win one?
Yeah, but I don't think it's like you can't blame it fully on just Ovechkin, right? Like he can show up and the rest of his team just like forgets how to skate, and that's all you
true,
got.
But I think from a guy who's wearing the C on his chest, he lacks some characteristics of the team leader.
Yeah,
I mean, he's given up on the Capitals a lot too.
Yeah,
so
okay, fair enough.
You know, Rocket Richard, I think you can put him in the conversation every year. Hart Trophy sometimes, I think, you can do that. Art Ross, sure, why not? But when it comes to like the most important things, I don't know that you can put him there.
Yeah, okay, I agree with that.
And we're recording this on a Sunday night. It's April 8th, last day of the regular season. We just saw Bruins scored. It's now 3-2 Florida. We're trying to figure out the outcomes and scenarios for the playoffs. There's only one left. Sean, very curious to find out who his Devils will be playing in the first round. So Florida, who's already been eliminated from the playoffs, we're just kind of waiting to see who New Jersey's going to play. But as we said, last night of the regular season, let's take a look back at the regular season in itself. Talk a little bit of overperformers and underperformers.
Yeah, so, I mean, I want to start with overperformers because I think this guy, my overperformer, completely shot everything out of expectations. Like,
Mm-hmm.
where the heck did William Karlsson come from?
Yeah, man. He just sounds like one of those guys who is like he'll be called up and sent down 4 times a year. Like he just felt like one of those guys who was like he had not cemented a roster spot and had not proven his worth. And not only did it seem like he proved his worth, he just absolutely shot out of a cannon.
Yeah, but also, like, his shooting percentage was phenomenal. Like, nobody should have that type of shooting percentage. So, like, I don't, like, I mean, he's gonna get a payday, let's be honest, right? He's a free agent at the end of this year, and Vegas is gonna pay him.
It becomes a little choice of like who does Vegas pay because there's so many pending free agents.
They have a couple of guys on 2 years,
Yeah,
to be
but
fair.
isn't Neil free agent at the end of this year?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't, like, the thing with Carlson is his contract is like $1 million right now.
Yeah, so he'll get
He's
a
gonna
payday,
be the
but it's
big
not going to
jump,
be as
right?
big as other guys.
Neil's gonna, like, ask for the same amount of money.
Yeah,
He's
Neil's
not going
on the
to
back end
affect
of
your
his career,
cap
too.
in
Yeah.
difference. This
Yeah,
guy,
that's
like,
true.
his shooting percentage is phenomenal, was phenomenal this season, and, like, I mean, sure, I mean, I don't think he's going to get to the points the points he had this season, at least not with a mellowing out his shooting percentage, which means he'll have to take more shots. But, I mean, I think his offensive production for the Golden Knights is a good thing, but you have to attribute his success to his entire line, which included Jonathan Marchessault for most of the season.
Yeah, let's just say what it is, too, with Vegas being as good as they were this year and the production that they had from really their whole roster on the professional NHL level, is they were able to really just click from the get-go. And not only like there's only one puck. You're playing a game with 25 guys and only one puck, and to be able to have a coming out party like that is just extremely impressive because everybody's trying to prove that they're not the misfit on this team, and to be able to get enough of a chance to show that you are there.
We already determined that the misfit on that team was Vadim Shipachyov, so nobody else is becoming the misfit on that team.
Well, at the beginning of the year, I'm just saying from the concept that like these were all guys, they were let go by another team, even if it was reluctantly so, they were let go.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So
yeah, but
I
mean,
in that way, I speak about it.
Everybody on that team performed to another level, really, but his really stood out. That I think, even though I do see his, like, previous to the season, he hadn't had that good offensive years. Like, you're probably looking at having his points completely.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I do expect him to have good offensive years, but nowhere to the production that he had this year going forward.
Right, this kind of feels like it was kind of a blinded to the rookie, like I didn't know he was that good kind of thing. And then scouting in the future is going to eliminate that productivity to an extent, and he'll kind of become a role player, and he won't be looked at as who we're seeing it on the ice now.
Yeah, so I mean, do you have any other over guy who you think stood out, even if it's just like stepped up during the season or whatever?
See, I pretty much agree with you. I mine is I like Fleury as an overachiever just because he was brought into Vegas to be the huge franchise piece, the team leader, and he, outside of being injured a few times, really has handled the role very well. He's been that foundation, and just out in Vegas, I think he deserves more props than he's gotten this year. With Fleury, he was never the Vezina finalist. The numbers never spoke to his career goals and what he was able to achieve. He didn't have the goals allowed average that was like in the top 5 every year, but like he's just that piece where like you know what you're going to get. Maybe that's not overachieving, but I mean, hindsight, look at him and what Matt Murray did this year. Fleury was definitely the better piece.
Oh yeah, like my actually like so I also wanted to mention basically all of Vegas goaltenders this season, like Malcolm Subban, who they got from in the offseason, not through
Mm-hmm.
the draft, from the Bruins. Oh my God, he played really well in the games that he was brought in. Then when Fleury went down, you had Oscar Dansk, who came in from their AHL affiliate in Chicago, and he played pretty darn well. And then you went all the way down to like Maxime Lagacé, and for the game or two he started, he played like their entire goaltending six, I think, all the way down into the ECHL or whatever affiliate they have, played admirably. Like they all had great seasons. And that's a highly contributing factor to the success they had this season.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the joke play, in my mind, I was thinking like a great joke would be like anyone who was overachieving who was in Vegas's net at the beginning of the year, but I tried to go for a more serious take, but uh, and not to say that yours wasn't a serious take, which obviously it was. I just think like it was when looking back, it was kind of comedic. It was kind of hilarious how many guys they had to call up. It's like there's no team in the last 10 years that we knew that they were calling up this many goaltenders. And
Yeah,
this is a franchise in their first year who has to do this.
They literally went to the ECHL for Dylan Ferguson, who ended up playing in the NHL for a couple of, like, for a period basically, when Maxime Lagacé went down
I mean,
before Dansk came back.
How surprising is it that they didn't have an emergency goaltender playing actual NHL minutes in that span? Like a guy off the street, how come we're not throwing him on the list like that? I mean, kudos to their scouting and their organization depth that they actually were able to keep going with that kind of production.
Yeah. All right, and we're still talking about goaltenders, but I want to move on to the underperformers. And the one person that stood out to underperform, Carey Price from Montreal.
Yeah. I feel like this happens every other year. I feel like, because this has happened not within the past 2-3 years, but the guy just like, because didn't they like a few years back win the President's Trophy? And we're talking like, oh, Carey Price, phenomenal goaltender.
Yeah,
and then
he's
the next
paid
year
like
they'll miss
10
the
million.
playoffs.
Yeah, but again, that's the other problem. Like, remember I was telling you, how can one player or two players in Edmonton's case take up $20 million of the cap space, right? I'm pretty sure Carey Price takes up $10 million.
Yeah. It's a shame because like,
unfortunately, I'd rather have the goalie taking up $6 million rather than the goalie taking up 10. Like, I mean, he's a great player when he's on, but he's severely underperformed. I'm pretty sure his save percentage was 900 this year.
And for him, that's low.
Niemi is doing better than him.
Yeah, and Niemi is...
And we're talking about the guy who gave up 10 goals for Pittsburgh at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, Antti Niemi is a goaltender who plays purely on luck.
Literally, he's like, oh, I think it's coming to my left. Let me put my glove up. Oh, I made a save.
Yeah, I mean, Antti Niemi preseason save of the year, but like, he can't last with the team for like 10 games.
Unless it's Montreal. He played out the season.
Carey Price, nowhere near as bad as Antti Niemi, but he's like a streaky goaltender, but the streak is season long. He'll have amazing seasons or he'll have really bad seasons. And it just seems like there's nothing in the middle and there's no consistency.
I'm just like surprised. Like he went through what was that, 2 or 3 teams before hitting Montreal, in which he's actually like performing in Montreal.
Are
He
we talking
played,
about Niemi or are we
yeah.
talking about
No,
Price?
Niemi played pretty well for Montreal being as bad as it is.
Hmm.
Like Niemi still put up like decent numbers if you were to prorate them through the entire season.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that Pittsburgh gave him enough of a sample size, but at the same time, it's like
I
you
think you
can't.
let in 10 goals and you're out.
Yeah. Uh, actually,
You let
maybe
in like
that's a big enough sample size in itself, really.
yeah, he got like 2 starts. He let in like 10 goals and like 5 or 7.
Yeah, like I said, preseason save of the year. It doesn't mean jack, but
And
it
then
sure was a nice
the
one.
other thing is he went to like 2 other teams which I don't even remember, and he still performed like crap and got waived in a month.
It wasn't. I feel like, and we could guess teams and be wrong, and no one would question us here. But I feel like Calgary was one of them.
Nah. I'm
Uh,
pretty sure one of them was Florida.
oh,
Because
that's it. That's was the
yeah.
one he went to first after the Penguins, I think.
If he
Because
went to 2
Luongo was
teams,
hurt.
I remember one he went to Florida and then he got cut in a month.
Yeah, because Luongo was hurt when he
Mhm.
was picked up,
Yep.
and then he went somewhere
Did he go
else.
straight to Montreal after that, or did he do something else?
We really don't need to get into his travels. We can just assume that he played for half the teams and probably be right at this point in time.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to Carey Price. It's just this might have been the most consistent year of Carey Price's career, just solely because it's the second year in a row that the Canadians didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he was hurt. I mean, like, he was hurt. Like, I don't know how much he was hurt. They all were all like, "Oh, our goaltender's hurt," but he was like walking around perfectly fine and all this. So I don't know what to tell you, but I mean, to be fair, you can't really blame the entirety of Montreal on him. But again, it comes to the fact that you're spending so much on one player. Like, how do you bolster around them, right? So
I feel like we're on to something here that I don't think anybody else in sports has really developed this. I think we can develop an equation that is part salary cap, part blame, and the percentage between your salary cap is the amount of blame that you should take for your team's failure or success.
I mean, to be fair, like then you're telling me that we should blame Connor McDavid for Edmonton not making the playoffs,
Well, not
or should we
solely because
blame
someone
Peter
had to offer.
Chiarelli?
Not solely on McDavid because someone had to offer that money.
Peter
So,
Chiarelli.
yeah, right. So with that transitive property, we do include the management and stuff like that, but it's an incomplete formula, but it's a formula nonetheless.
Also, the thing about French speakers in Montreal, like I think that is the problem.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
like for a long time they were like, "Oh, our coach needs to speak French and our players we want them to mostly speak French," and like just if you form a team and you don't force everybody to speak a language, like everybody's going to learn English, or if you want people to learn French, go ahead, but like that was a big problem in the building of Montreal, I feel like, cuz they're limiting themselves in the talent pool even if you just talk about coaches, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's okay. So we've now
Actually, there's one other person. I want to talk about Brett Burns from San Jose. I think he
over or under.
underperformed this season.
Ooh, wow, that's a hot take considering he's
In
probably a candidate for the Norris.
I don't think so. No, he's not a
Not
candidate
a
for the
high
Norris.
candidate, not a high
No,
candidate, but
he's not
he's
getting the
a
Norris this
candidate.
year. And it stems from the fact that it took him like 20 some games to get a point or a goal or something.
But he still ended up with somewhere over 50, didn't he?
Points.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't see it like his even though he ended up with over 50, having a cold streak of 20 games to start the season when you are the star player is a problem.
Yeah, and considering at this point in time with Joe Thornton getting older, you're the only star player. As like the core that San Jose has is just it's now around Brent Burns, but that team is not built to win in the playoffs anymore.
Right? So, I mean, my hot take, Brett Burns underperformed. He had that cold streak, and if you're trying to be a star player, like who we'll talk about the heart in a little bit, but if you want to be a star player, you gotta perform. Like having a couple of games here or there where you don't have points is fine, but 20, that's a problem for
Yeah.
being the center focal point of the team.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think Chris Letang could probably be injured and out for that many games and still register a point. Just
Yeah,
sitting in the press box with a scarf on.
yeah.
But you said you wanted to get into the Hart Trophy, so let's talk about that. We are right now sitting about an hour into this podcast, and it's our first episode, which is good. I think we don't want to have a 15-minute podcast anyway, but we should probably wrap this up. So let's do a little Hart talk, and then let's jump into our playoff talk. Because as we're speaking right now, there's about 2.5 minutes left in the third period of the Panthers Bruins game. Panthers up 3-2. So I'm thinking by the time that we're done with the Hart talk, we will have a complete playoff bracket.
Yeah. So, I'll just say my top. So I know we wrote 4 players down for the Hart, right? So Taylor Hall, Nathan McKinnon, Anze Kopitar, and Claude Giroux. Those are my top 4 for the Hart. I'm pretty sure Jeremy will agree with me and maybe have another player.
I'll agree with you, but the fact of the matter is just the Pittsburgh and me will not allow Claude Giroux to be that number 1 spot. It just it can't happen. There's just it's been a good year for Philly, but like if you want the Hart
102
Trophy,
points.
then it's been a good year for Philly. But feel free to give Giroux the Hart Trophy if you're not going to give him the cup. But you can't have both. You can't have both. So pick your poison.
Hey,
your
you're
poison.
playing them first round, dude. You can eliminate both of those things.
Not a poll that I'm really excited with, Sean, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But
let's actually, so because you brought up Claude Giroux, I want to start with him, why he's in my top 4. Okay? So, number 1, 102 points. He had 102 points this season, right? So that puts him at 102 points over all 82 games this season. So that's quite a bit over a point per game. And I mean, they, along with the Devils, they barely scraped in the playoffs like half the Metro. So,
I'm all for let's talk about how they barely got in, but
so like, I just feel like he took his point production up to another level, which we hadn't seen. Like last season, he had like 50 some points.
this is true. I think it's weird because we're looking at a lot of our top candidates for this trophy are on teams that kind of squeaked into the playoffs. Not to take anything away from Nathan McKinnon, Taylor Hall, or Claude Giroux, but their production single-handedly, I guess you can say in their case, gets them into the playoffs, but against them is like, you look at the standings and it's kind of like, can we pick someone from a better team? It's like, is this the MVP supposed to be the best player on the best team, or is it supposed to be the best player?
No, so the Hart is supposed to be the most valuable player to a team, right?
Okay. So it works a little different from sport to sport.
Yeah,
so it's good to clear that up.
There's another MVP that's voted by other players that will basically give the trophy to Connor McDavid.
And again, we get back to the point.
So I mean the Hart Trophy is the most valuable player to their team, and that's why you're gonna see a lot of them focused around the bubble teams, basically. the teams that are very close to just on that cusp of making the playoffs, right? Because I could put a Malkin in there, but I mean, no offense to you, but you guys are so stacked.
Yeah, no,
Like Crosby, Malkin, Letang.
I wouldn't put Malkin in there just because, like, look, you've got Phil Kessel and Evgeny Malkin for most of the year were in the top 10 in points, and to have two in the top 10, that just speaks to like how one is not so much more important than the other.
Yeah, same thing with Kucherov and Stamkos. Like, I mean, they're great players, but they're not so much more important to their team. Like, sure, you'll miss them, but like if you took Giroux from the Flyers,
Then you have nothing.
yeah, or I mean, you basically have like Gostisbehere and that's
And Wayne
it.
Simmons.
And Wayne Simmons, and then if you took Hall from the Devils, you're basically looking at like a 50-point team.
Yeah, if you took Taylor Hall from the Devils, we're back to in the preseason when we say, oh, look, the Devils are building for a future, but it's not here yet. With Taylor Hall, you're saying, like, maybe they can win steal around and, like, we had nothing to lose, but let's see what happens.
Yeah, so that's like the reason that the Heart focuses on the bubble teams is because of, it's like they usually have one guy who is carrying them in some way, whether it be the goaltender in a lot of cases or in like these three, Taylor Hall, Giroux, and McKinnon's case, it's forwards.
Yeah,
And,
no, I completely agree. It's just hard to get me to want to side with the Flyers. Like, let's try to be professional here at the same time, but let's be realistic.
Again, so like you guys know that I'm a Devils fan and Jeremy over there is a Penguins fan. Like we both really dislike the Flyers.
Yeah, we're just anti-Philadelphia on this show.
Yeah,
Let's just say what it is.
I'm willing
Philadelphia
to
is
give
not a
Giroux
real place.
I'm willing to give Giroux the credit that I think he's at least deserves consideration. Cause
I mean, yeah, I'll consider it and then say that he won't get it. But
and then
doesn't mean I won't think about it. I'll just think about it and have a biased answer.
And then like you have a kid like McKinnon who 97 points over the season, which he played 74 games. So, I mean, he's definitely in my consideration for it. But the thing is, like, he had a couple of games down the stretch where he pretty much slumped out with the rest of the team, in which they could have missed the playoffs.
Yeah, they got very lucky. But my question to you, because Giroux has kind of been near the top 20 players in the NHL for years now, is this year's Hart Trophy the young man's or young players trophy, so to speak, because of you having McKinnon and Taylor Hall? Is it more impressive that these young guys came in and did it, especially with Taylor Hall not being able to do that in Edmonton and to be able to do it in New Jersey on what was supposed to be a rebuilding year, than it is for Claude Giroux, who kind of, to some extent, has done this before. Anze Kopitar, he's won cups before. It's like, we knew the value of these two guys. Nathan McKinnon is like, look, he's been in the league for a few years now, and he kind of didn't take that step to where he got the Avalanche that far, but now he has. So now it's like, do we give some bonus credit to the guys who kind of broke out this year?
To be fair, I mean, in Giroux's case, I'll get to Kopitar in a little bit, but to be fair, in Giroux's case, him and the rest of the Flyers had an abysmal season last year.
This is true, but it's not like the Flyers were out of the playoffs every year.
No, but my point with putting Giroux in my top 4 for the Hart is the fact that even though he's old, it's not like, I mean, to be fair, we all expected Taylor Hall to be this good. Maybe not exactly this good, but to at least have it in him to get to a point per game.
Oh yeah, I think all these guys, I mean,
but
they're here at this point where we're talking about it. They obviously had the potential to be here.
Yeah, and so my thing is, even though he's an older player and he has done it, you can't just say because he's done it before he's not important to his team. I feel like, again, like, even though he's done it before, he was deserves to be considered for most valuable player to their team for this year. I'm not saying he'll win it. Again, I'm a Devils fan, so I have a little bit of biasness here.
Right. No, I think that like the realistic experts that aren't us would put on their blogs that Taylor Hall is the number 2, but I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if he won it, just because of look. No, none of these other guys had the 30-game point streak that Taylor Hall had.
26.
Okay. Well, let's estimate just for the sake of bad radio here. Because bad radio definitely means that you can't do math. But no, it's like 26-game point streak. Giroux, if every player in the league had that, then we wouldn't have talked about what it was. But the fact of the matter is only Taylor Hall did.
Yeah. I mean, but again, like, I'm just trying to put out my top 4, right? Like, I have a biased opinion towards Taylor Hall. I'll be completely honest, but I can see a case made for any of those 4 players that I have mentioned.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I think they're all deserving to some extent, except for Giroux. No, but I think that Giroux is deserving, but at the same time, I really was just waiting for that slip for the Flyers to miss. And the fact that they didn't, I mean, kudos to them, I guess. But, I don't know. I just feel like Taylor Hall deserves it more. I think, Anze Kopitar and Claude Giroux, it's like, oh, that's nice that your team had bounce back years in both LA and Philadelphia. But, it's just, I don't feel like this lasts for either one of your teams. For New Jersey, it's building towards the future. This is just like a staple that says only the beginning.
Okay, but I mean, I don't think in the Hart Trophy it's all about this season, right? So I don't think you should consider last season or the seasons to come, because you could be like Edmonton next season and just completely fall off the face of the earth.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm just saying, like, if we're going storylines, a feel-good story is Taylor Hall. Claude Giroux is kind of like, well, he came back because he was at the top of his game and then kind of lost it.
He had a momentous impact in his team making the playoffs. That's, again, I agree with Taylor Hall because I'm a Devils fan, and he did so much for that team. Again, he had 40 more points than anybody else on the Devils, and the second person was Nico Hischier, 18 years old at the start of the season. Like, there's a lot to be said about Taylor Hall if we keep talking, but I wanted to focus on the other guys because, I mean, I'm sure that everybody listening to us will realize that I am biased.
Yeah, it's definitely only one-sided on that. Definitely no bias here. Have not
aside
been
from
talking
against
about
Claude Giroux.
Well, but who isn't? Let's just say what it is. Broad Street bullies my ass.
Yeah,
haven't won a cup since '75. And speaking of cups, if you don't mind, if you'll indulge me, I think we do need to get to some playoff talk before.
Which, by the way, the Boston and Florida games just ended 4-2 the Panthers, so the seedings have been decided, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah, so for any of the tens of projected listeners for our first episode, we are so good at this that you should listen more often because we were able to plan our show knowing that this game and the playoff seedings and scenario and matchups were all going to be done midway through the show. We absolutely knew it 100%. We knew it 10 days ago. We knew it 38 days ago. Whatever hindsight you want to call it, we knew this was going to happen and planned for it.
Yeah, so I mean, just to finish up the heart talk, like, so we talked about Giroux. I want to get to McKinnon a little bit. I talked about Hall. So let's talk about McKinnon. Like, he really put the team on his back. I mean, sure, he didn't put up like the point streak that Hall did, but I feel like every time I was watching that team, you would have clusters of games where he'd get points like 4 or 5, and then he'd miss, and then 4 or 5, which is, you need to be consistent. And consistent doesn't mean getting a 26 game point streak in a lot of cases. It means that you can get points most nights.
Right, and we're talking
And they're
about McKinnon
meaningful.
here, right?
Yeah, McKinnon. So like you can get points most nights and they're meaningful, which I mean, I feel like he did pretty well.
Yeah, but it comes back to what you were saying. You know, he slumped and they almost missed the playoffs. So his value is that high, but his game has yet to really find that stride where you know what you're getting every night.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And I mean, also for McKinnon, if this is like just a show of what's to come, like Avs fans have a lot to look forward to. Because I mean, he put on a great show this year. A lot of the Avs players bounced back pretty well. Like Landeskog had a pretty decent year, I feel like. But still, like, McKinnon is the one that drove their playoff bus, and again, he almost faltered a little bit, but the team ended up pulling through. And I mean, it sucks for them losing Varlamov at the end of the year, but we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's really quick. This was your top four, so I want to try to get your opinion here. Rank your top four for the Hart Trophy. Who's coming out on top?
I think Taylor Hall gets the Hart Trophy.
And who comes in second, third, and fourth?
So second for me is Kopitar.
Mm-hmm.
Third is McKinnon, and fourth is Giroux. But that's because, again, like,
A little
I
biased.
really, I like, again, I just think Taylor Hall deserves it with the amount of production is so top heavy on the Devils. Like, it's a really big problem to be this top heavy, because now you're looking at the playoffs, right? If a team can figure out how to shut down Taylor Hall, like the Maple Leafs is a really good example in the season series where Taylor Hall had 0 points.
Yeah. No, I
It,
completely agree. But mine,
but
I'm going. I'd actually probably put Drew a little higher. I think that Kopitar takes number three, and Drew probably is closer to number two. I don't know
okay.
that I put McKinnon number four or Kopitar number four, but just I feel like there's probably the latter two, and I have Taylor Hall winning it.
Yeah, but to be fair, like, even though I rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, like, I really do think it's really close. And any of my top four, I could see him winning it, and that's just how I feel. Like, I mean, I really do think Taylor Hall deserves it, but I could see when the awards come out that we see McKinnon or Giroux or Kopitar on the Hart Trophy.
No, I completely agree. And I think it's good for the game of hockey. I think it's good for the sport. Uh, for a lot of markets to have these caliber players. Hopefully, it grows the game more. Uh, because I can tell you right now, sitting here in Wilmington, North Carolina, people don't give an SHI about hockey here. Uh, and really, it is a shame. You kind of hope that these markets get players like that. Wish that, North Carolina, when they had a player like Eric Stahl, I'm sure people were more ecstatic, and the fan base was larger. So it's like kudos to New Jersey and to Colorado to be able to start to build their fan bases up again. Uh, Not really heart talk, but for the brand and for the game.
Yeah. I completely agree. It's good thing. It's good to see. Uh, I mean, like, but that's the other thing. Like, we're going to go back for a little bit talking about Barzil and Tavares, right? Like, if they don't get Tavares, you're gonna see a drop in attendance to the New York Islanders.
Yeah,
It's
that's true.
gonna happen.
They really and with when they had Tavares coming up in his first few years in New York, and they were starting to get closer and closer, and was it 2015 or 16 or whatever? I think it was 2016 when they won that second round matchup, or made it to the second round, I should say. Is like that. They had that fan base back again, and then it kind of faltered back down. So
Yeah.
and now they're back where they're at. All right,
Yeah.
you have anything else you want to talk to before we get to playoff talk?
No. Let's get to playoffs because I feel like a lot, like we can even single out like specific players if we want during the playoff talk. So
Yeah. Plus, we're an hour and 20 minutes into this. I don't think we're anticipating that the whole show is going to be this long, but here we are, and we'll make future episodes shorter. But for right now, we've got a lot to talk about. We're talking awards. We're talking playoffs. We do have a complete bracket set up. We have that Nashville is going to be playing against Colorado. President's Trophy versus almost missed it, but because St. Louis choked before the playoffs this year, they're in. Winnipeg is on their best year since coming back from Atlanta, and they're playing against the Wild. You got Vegas, the surprising Knights, the impressive Knights against the LA Kings, and you have the Ducks versus the Sharks, and that's all out west. And then in the east, you have Tampa Bay playing against the Devils. You have Boston versus Toronto. You have the Caps versus the Blue Jackets, which might be fun because who knows? It all depends on if Washington can win that first round, and the Penguins versus the Flyers. Everybody's favorite nightmare in Pittsburgh.
oh, hold on. I think that the Penguins versus the Flyers will be the best matchup, but we'll save that for last. Let's hit the West first.
All right.
So let's just go top down. Let's start with the President's Trophy winners versus the barely made it into the playoffs.
See,
So
I feel like this one's not close.
yeah, I don't.
I
I
feel
mean,
like
I can see maybe max going 6 games. I think Colorado might take a game off, so we'll say it goes 4-1 Nashville in 5 if you're asking me.
I think it maybe goes 5 just because like I feel that I mean it kind of took me by surprise that the Predators like had the President's Trophy. I'll admit I haven't watched hockey to the diehard basis this year, where like I was focused on the Predators in the last 10 games of the season. But like the fact that they won the President's Trophy caught me off guard. But just Rene being Rene and your defense being what it is, not to mention you have Benino in the playoffs, you have Mike Fisher back, you have Forsberg. Assuming these guys are all healthy, because again, I haven't been paying attention as much as
Yeah.
maybe I should have. Colorado doesn't have that.
Yeah,
They
and
don't
I mean
have
they
that
also
depth. They don't
have
have that star power, and Varlamov is out. So
yeah, but I mean also you have to look at Nashville. They have Rene and Saros, and they've been playing admirably this entire season. But I
yeah,
mean, I think Bernier, like he could, depending on if he shows up, take 1 game.
yeah. I just
I can
don't.
see it, and
Yeah,
maybe
and
a
I think
second
that's
game if he's
generous.
lucky.
Yeah, I think if we're being generous, I think it's a 5 game series. So but if we're being generous and we're throwing a little bit of luck, then they can make it a 6 game series. I
And
don't
I
think
mean,
that there's any chance of winning
it
this one.
again, it's a best of 7. Really, anything can happen because it
It
depends on how
could.
you adapt.
It could. And look, Nashville was the very last seed in the whole thing last year, and they made it to the final. So we very well could be wrong, but I think we're in agreement that this one should be Nashville taking the cake.
Yeah, I agree with it. And again, for all the reasons you said, like they have just a lot of really good players and two really good goalies that they can depend on.
Yeah, I think I agree. So that one was pretty easy to get through. Let's talk Winnipeg and Minnesota. I don't know how you feel about the Wild. It seems like the Wild are the team that great fan base, great atmosphere, but can't seem to get past the first round as of lately against the Winnipeg team that really they had a couple eighth seed in the old playoff format appearances, but really haven't made much noise in the playoffs either. But they never had a team like this.
So I actually think this series is going to be really close, and for a couple of different reasons, right? So on one side you have Connor Hellebuck, and on the other side you have Dubnyk.
Right.
My problem, so Hellebuck has played the most games out of any starting goaltender in the NHL this season at 67.
Right. So they've leaned on him very hard.
So can he continue to play to a high level during the playoffs, or is he going to get tired?
Yeah, I think that's a hard one. I think it all depends on the offense in front of him.
And then what Dubnyk is going to show up? The one that can shut out for 180 minutes, or the one that gives those little iffy chances every once in a while?
Yeah, see, I feel like my take on this is Minnesota in either 6 or 7, probably more likely 7, just because you have Eric Stahl, you have Granlund, you have the pieces that say veteran squad wins here. I think Winnipeg is
also,
up and coming, but I just
Minnesota's
don't know.
missing Suter.
Yeah.
So they won't have Suter for the playoffs.
That's true, but
I mean, they do have Stahl and Parise coming back. Let's see how he can impact the team.
Yeah, but I just feel like Minnesota, they have cup winners on the team, albeit not cup winners in Minnesota, but they have that veteran experience. Plus, Eric Stahl's been playing out of his mind the past year and a half.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree that I think this series has the most potential to go 7 games. I think that Winnipeg can take it though.
What's your predictions?
So I'm saying Winnipeg takes it in 7.
All right, so we'll touch back on that one later. I think we don't really have a bracket in front of us. It's kind of hard to go round by round, and I think we've kind of gone deep enough into the show that maybe we just touch on the first round and give hope our takes on who we think is going to win it all without looking at the bracket and going round by round all 4 rounds this week. But that's something that we can continue to look at in future episodes too.
Yeah, so let's hit Vegas.
We're hitting the Vegas Strip.
The Kings. So let's see with Vegas again. Like they're the little old dark horses. Nobody has faith in them because they're a new team and they've been performing to an amazing extent. And then you have the Kings, who were in a seed battle with the Sharks and the Ducks.
See, my gut tells me that you got to go with Vegas on this one. I think you have Neal and Fleury and guys who have been in the final enough times to be the presence that you need on the ice, whereas LA, you're coming back from not being in the playoffs last year, at least as recollection serves, if correct. And if they didn't make the playoffs, they didn't get out of the first round. I just feel like Vegas has played such a strong year that they don't have the pressure to succeed because they shouldn't have been here anyway. So it's no chip on the shoulder, or maybe a chip on the shoulder, but nothing against them if they don't make it too far. Like, if they lose in this round, we'll say, like, okay, so the Vegas that was supposed to be this year finally showed up, but it showed up now. But it was supposed to have shown up in October. So the fact
but I don't think they're going to crash and burn.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. If they crash, it's going to be a 7-game series.
Yeah.
I just don't see it getting that far.
I think it's like 6.
Yeah, I'd say 5 or 6. I
But
think more realistically 6.
I mean, to be fair, quick, right? So he he should be on the on year to
Yeah.
perform. So I can see this series going 7, like a really close 7.
hmm I just don't. I don't see it going 7, just because I think the more realistic number is 6.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
think that
think that
Vegas
too.
just has the firepower that LA seems to lack.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree. I'm good with Vegas in 6, but I think it has more of a chance to go 7.
All right. And then we have Anaheim versus San Jose. This one,
I think this is a crapshoot.
of the 4 matchups in the West, this is the one that's like you might as. No disrespect to the game of hockey, but this is one where
No, this is a
you might just watch Sports Center talk about LeBron
hold
on
on.
this one.
For California, this is a great series.
But everybody else or
For
everywhere
everybody
else,
else,
no,
I'm sorry.
it's not. It's like these are 2 teams that's like they've been in the playoffs the past few years, and it's great that they're this consistent. But they kind of got here very quietly without making any noise on a huge scale, to where
To be
we turned
fair,
on to NBC and was like, oh, they're talking about the Ducks or they're talking about the Sharks. It just
to be
hasn't
fair
really happened.
though, to be fair, the Ducks had to overcome a lot in the beginning where they had like literally their entire top 6 was out,
hmm
and like they had to trade for Adam Henrique to be their first line center for a couple of weeks,
Yeah,
and they
and
still made it over 100 points
yes,
into a
like I
playoff
said,
spot.
and props to the storylines early on, but I just feel like both these teams, they snuck in but didn't sneak into the lower seeds. They were just they just did their job quietly, head down, and just went to work.
Yeah.
And
And then same
it's
thing with the
admirable.
San Jose.
Yeah, it's admirable qualities. But like for playoff hype, if you're not in California, I don't think that you care as much about this one. I don't feel like you think either of these 2 teams are making it to the conference final.
I can agree with that, but I do think that the that matchup and also the Vegas and LA matchup is great for West Coast hockey.
Oh, I absolutely agree with
I
that.
think like just the fact that this happened to where the seating looks like this and you don't have like LA playing Nashville or something where all the teams are so close together and these are do or die games basically is great for the sport and great for the hockey in that area too.
Yeah,
And
and this comes back full circle to like it's a shame that out in the West, teams like the Coyotes and stuff, because like when the Coyotes would make the playoffs, their fans would show up to those playoff games, and it's like it's just a shame that you couldn't consistently get those. But now that you have teams like Anaheim and San Jose and the Vegas, because LA was making it pretty regularly anyway when the other 3 teams weren't. Uh, it definitely is great for West Coast hockey.
yeah, so I mean, if you're on the West Coast, I would look forward to both of these series. Unfortunately, like they'll be at 10 p.m. for us. It's going to
Yeah.
be hard for us to even keep up with them until the
Yeah, I
next
think
morning.
for us personally, I think our entertainment value, not only because of our teams being in the East, but because of the matchups in the East, is more intriguing than it is in the West. Just because you kind of look at the Nashville, Colorado, or teams like Nashville, teams like Vegas and LA Kings, and you say these probably are your 3 that could make the conference final, but it's a limited draw as to who's making it to the final. I feel like in the West, in the East, you have so many possible contenders.
To be fair, like it just I think it depends. Like I think that Anaheim and San Jose series can go far. Do think that I think that if Anaheim can prove they can play a clean series, because I think their defense is better than San Jose in an all-around type of way. I do think they can at least like make the second round. I'll have them winning over San Jose, and I think they can make the second round a challenge and compete for that conference final slot. But I won't say they would win it.
Yeah, I'm completely on board with you on that one.
And again, like they showed their adversity in making it through quite a few weeks with literally forcing Adam Henrique, who's slid in greatly to the third line center role. And I mean, I love Adam Henrique. He came from the Devils, but he was forced to basically come in and play first line center for a couple of weeks, and they bounced back from that greatly. And I mean, I wish I could watch this series because, like, it's just great for hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of great for hockey, I think it's time we really get into the meat and potatoes of the playoff talk here, which is
For us,
going to
it's
be
the
the East.
East Coast.
I mean, let's just say what it is. Our
Yeah,
teams,
for us.
and just because you have, you have Tampa Bay, Boston, Washington, and Pittsburgh all with a legitimate shot to make the final here.
I mean, I really do think that each matchup can go either way.
Yeah,
I don't
think
see
so
an
too.
easy first round for any of the teams in the East.
Yeah, I think your easiest, and I hate to say this because you're a Devils fan, is Tampa Bay against the Devils. And I know the Devils, you have told me a number of times, if they swept the Tampa Bay Lightning in this regular season series. But the same can be said of the Penguins to the Flyers. And we're sitting here saying, look, it's still going to be close. It's still going to be close.
Yeah.
I
mean,
think maybe actually, now I'm looking at it again, Washington might have the easiest first round. Just because
yeah, I think
Columbus
so.
hasn't won a series yet in the playoffs.
But so I'm going to counter argue on the Tampa Bay and New Jersey. I think that series is going to be close. I don't say it's going to be easy for Tampa, but then again, it's not going to be easy for New Jersey either,
Right.
because all of the games, they were won by one goal, I'm pretty sure. One goal by the Devils, and one of them was a shootout, at least. At least one of them was a shootout.
No,
So,
I completely agree. But
and also, my other thing is, Tampa has been on, like, they just lost to Carolina to close the season. No, I'm sorry about Carolina, but they suck, and you should not be losing to Carolina as the number one team in the Eastern Conference.
yeah, I think, and shout out my father on this one because he always told me when it comes to sports, it really comes down to who's hot at the right time, who's going to finish the season on the big win streak. We saw in 2016 the Penguins kind of won was it 12? Actually, no, I think it was like 16 or 15 of 16 coming down the stretch and launched that all the way to the cup.
Yeah.
So it's, it's kind of like, and we saw how Washington can win the President's Trophy 2 years in a row, but they will play average hockey down the stretch and just kind of fizzle out. So
Yeah.
momentum reigns kind of supreme when it comes to the playoffs, and I think that kind of speaks in some way to the point that you're trying to make with New Jersey is kind of like you're playing that team you don't know if they're fizzling out at this point in time because they've had such a strong season, but if they are, watch out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, my thing is the Devils are on a huge upswing. We've won 10 of our last 15, 16.
Yeah, so we're looking at two very different stories going into the
And then
series.
Tampa Bay is on a small skid. I mean, they did have a good showing for the week, but then they come back to lose in overtime against Carolina in a game they really should have won. They tied it up with quite a bit of time left. But then, like, you have Boston, who just closed out the season with a loss to Florida when Reimer was in net, and Florida has 0 to play for.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
And Toronto, who's been actually playing pretty well, even though they lost to the Devils on the Thursday before the end of the season, I think they've actually been playing pretty well down the stretch.
Yeah, and Toronto kind of went from that surprise last year to and went like, let's see if they can actually build upon it, or if they'll kind of have a sophomore slump, because most of their talent was first year players like Matthews and Marner, and they just kept rolling with it, which kudos to them, and it should make for an interesting series. This is, if I'm a casual fan, this is a series to watch. This Boston versus Toronto one, because I'm not sure if you remember. I think, was it the lockout season 2013 when the Bruins made it to the final?
Mm-hmm.
But
yep, that
was the series, and I think the second round that went to Game 7, where the Leafs blew it and the Bruins won Game 7 in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a Maple Leafs fan, this is the chance at revenge. This could be the start of huge things if they can win this series. And if I'm Boston, it's like Boston, man, they just put up so much offensive production that's the only thing, is can the Maple Leafs hang with it?
So no, it's not even that. I don't think. I think it's just playoff hockey is inherently different, right?
Absolutely.
The Maple Leafs are a faster team, I feel like. I mean, they both have their youth, but Boston has physicality, right? And physicality shines a lot more in the postseason, which is why you see, like, the Devils, they picked up Maroon, because we have Boyle, they picked up Maroon for the trade deadline. Add physicality, because that is playoff hockey.
Yeah. No, you're completely right.
I mean, Boston has Marchand, I don't know how to say it. No matter how much I hate the guy. But they also have Chara and all these guys. They're so physical, right? So I think that Toronto can keep up in offensive production, but can they keep up in physicality and continue to win those battles?
No,
that is the big question.
No, I think you're completely right. And like I said, this might be, if you're not a fan of a certain team, if your team isn't in a rivalry series, this might be the matchup to watch. And actually, this one I'd say is a rivalry now. Are these two original six?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this has to be a rivalry matchup for sure. Then, definitely more than Washington versus Columbus. I think, in Washington versus Columbus could be a really good series, but we saw how Columbus had 10-game win streaks this year. They had one last year, and it didn't matter come playoff time, because playoff hockey is a completely different animal. And the thing that works against Columbus is they still don't know how to win that series in the playoffs. They still haven't found that formula.
But I think also they were very new. Like, most of their players were pretty new to the playoff picture last year.
Yeah.
So this year, I think
but
at least having the experience will make it a better series, because you have the continuous second round chokers in the Capitals against the never won a series and the Blue Jackets, right? So
yeah. So I think the big question is does Bobrovsky play to Bobrovsky's standards, or does he kind of fold like he did last year?
Yeah, that's
last
good question.
Year he did not play well, and really they don't have that solid backup where you don't have a fall off.
Yeah, so hold on. Since we did predictions for the West, why don't we just circle back and do our predictions for the first these three matchups and then hit Pittsburgh?
All right, that sounds good to me. Well, I'll let you go first. I'm curious to find out.
As much as I want the Devils to win, I just feel like if the Lightning can shut down Taylor Hall, which in a 6-game series in a 7-game series you're going to at least try new things.
Right, and you'd be
So
able to adjust to it somewhat.
yeah, so I mean, as much as I want the Devils to win, I'm looking at like a 4-2 Lightning.
No, I can see that. I agree with that. I think it's either going to be 4-2 or unfortunately 4-1. It depends on how the Lightning come out in the series. Because if the Lightning put up 7 goals in the first game, I'm not thinking that New Jersey's lasting long. But I think that New Jersey is a team for the future, whereas the Lightning are a team for now. So New Jersey, and we've talked about this a number of times. The fact that New Jersey is in the playoffs at all is just, you know,
Yeah.
you guys, the Devil fans in Devil Nation, they're very content with that. Obviously, would you want more? Yeah, but I just don't see it happening this year. So I'll agree on a 4-2 Tampa Bay win.
Yeah, I mean, again, as much as I want the Devils to go to the next round, which I mean, I'm saying 4-2. I mean, I could totally see the Devils winning, but we have to convincingly come out first game and assert dominance and then keep it into the second game, which is really hard if we're going to be in Tampa.
Yeah, I think you guys steal game 1 or game 2.
Yeah. So, I mean, good we're in some sort of, the same place for
Yeah,
that game.
yeah.
So, what about Boston at Toronto? Why don't you take the reins?
See, I want Toronto to win it, but just knowing how Boston has manhandled some of the teams this year, I think that it's Boston in 6. I want it to
Okay.
be Toronto in 6 or 7, but I think it's Boston.
Okay, I'll go with that. I think Boston is the more physical team, and they will end up winning. Just because of physicality and how playoff hockey is.
Yeah, no, I think I think, like we said, this might be the most interesting matchup in the East to watch as a casual fan. But they play different style games,
Yeah,
and
and
Boston's prevails more in the playoffs than Toronto's.
as long as Marchand doesn't step over the line and elbow somebody in the face after the whistle.
Yeah, but if Marchand gets suspended, because you never know now, because he's got that dirty player label on his back. If he gets suspended, that could be a big time changer in the series.
Meh. All right, so let's hit. We were just talking about Washington and Columbus, so
Mhm.
What do you think?
I think it's Washington in 5 or 6. I don't see
I'm.
Columbus winning it.
I think it's a pretty quick series. I like
Yeah.
Washington in 5.
I mean, like, I feel bad for Columbus that they just get in and they're like the doormat to
So
other
what I
teams,
think
but
is, I think Columbus can actually come out and surprise people in the first game, but I think that Washington will just be able to adapt better.
yeah, I think that Columbus, if they don't win that first game, I think they'll have a game in the series, whether it be game 3 or 4 when they get
Home.
on their home ice. They'll have a showing like they kind of had last year in game 3 of the opening series against the Penguins, where you're like, okay, they're on home ice now. Look, they're gonna get fired up. This is gonna be different, and then it
They win a
just
game.
kind of like goes down in smoke.
Yeah.
Like
All right, so
it's a nice high, but it doesn't last.
yeah, I'm good with that. So let's talk about your favorite matchup,
Oh yeah,
Pittsburgh
yeah.
versus Philly.
Shades of 2012 coming back as nightmares. Whew. I mean, look, if it's 2008 or 2009, looking back at it and seeing how the Penguins manhandled the Flyers in the playoffs back then, it was something extra special. But
I think this series is gonna be close.
Philadelphia is a different animal in the playoffs, and this rivalry just means something different in the playoffs. I
think
want it
this
to be the
series is gonna be close,
Penguins,
yeah.
and I think it can be the Penguins in 6 or 7. But I think that if you think that this is a quick series by any stretch, you're crazy, and you're just look. You'd have a better chance of the Penguins taking the Capitals in 5 games than the Flyers this year. That's
Yeah,
just the
no,
nature of the
this
rivalry.
series is gonna be really close.
Yeah.
in my opinion. I think both of them exemplify playoff hockey pretty well. They're both physical teams. They both can control the puck. They both have the guy who can rush. It's gonna be a fun, good series to watch as a non-Pittsburgh or Philly, non-Pennsylvania fan. Um, I I really do think it'll go 7 because I mean, again, you guys are the same state. You're literally fighting for state dominance.
Yeah, yeah.
Gonna go 7. I'll let you have Pittsburgh in 7.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. See, the thing that scares me the most, actually, is just the fact that look at the year it's been for Philadelphia, and the fact that it hasn't stopped yet. We go from the Eagles to Villanova basketball, to Claude Giroux somehow not grabbing a police officer's ass. It's been a great year for Philadelphia, and it's just a question of if the spark dies now or if it's going to keep going.
My problem with my thing with why I think Pittsburgh's going to win, they're just the more seasoned team, right? They've won the last 2. I'm not saying that guarantees they're going to win any games this season, but basically their entire team has playoff experience.
Yeah, it's a whole roster have been there and done that.
Here, you have Patrick, Provorov, Gostisbehere is 3rd season?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
You only have a couple of players who have
legit
playoff experience.
And Simmons as your big leaders. And Couturier, I'll throw in Couturier, although he's kind of been up and down in his career. So it'll be interesting to see, but their defensemen do not have the experience that their forwards have. And their goaltenders,
that's gonna bite them.
Their goaltenders are not too... their goaltenders have playoff experience. We're talking Mrazek and we're talking... Elliott. But they're both goaltenders who haven't climbed to the top of the mountain either. So, we'll see how it goes. If you're Philadelphia, at some point you got to try to sign in the offseason a guy who's won a cup, who is maybe on the back end of their career and can be that leader. And they didn't have it when they had Mark Streit last year, but he was that leader. The only thing missing was the cup the ring on his finger. So I just don't know that Philadelphia has what it takes to get there yet. I think that, like you said, they have the talent to, but talent doesn't mean anything if you can't win the games with veteran composure and leadership.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, so I think we successfully ran down through the first round. So give me your Stanley Cup prediction and defend it.
All right, so look, as much as I want the Penguins to three-peat, I don't think it's going to happen. I've had this stance since the beginning of the year. I'd be ecstatic if it happened, but we got a repeat for the first time in almost 20 years. So a three-peat, we're looking at way, way smaller odds, and I just don't see it happening. And it's going to be tough when the Penguins lose in the playoffs, if that path takes place, but I just don't see a three-peat happening. I'd love to see them make the conference final, and I think that would be a good year for them because of, they still went somewhat, pretty damn deep. I just don't think it's them. I don't think it's Washington either. I think it's Tampa Bay or Boston, depending on who shows strongest in the first round. And I think out in the West, I'd give it to either Vegas or Nashville. I think I've had this mentality for years. It takes losing in the final to win in the final the next year. We saw the Penguins do it, not to be biased, but against the Red Wings in 2008 and then come back and beat them, the same Red Wings, in 2009. I think Nashville can climb the mountain this year, and it's going to be a shame that all the catfish in the world are going to be annoying on the ice. But we don't have Detroit in the playoffs anymore for Octopus to be on the ice, so we might as well I think this is Nashville's year to make it back to the final, and I really hate Boston. I do, but I think right now they're the strongest team in the East. Like I said, I can't stand Boston, and just the fan base there. Like people say, Pittsburgh Penguin fans are bad. Like Boston is like we have to deal with the Patriots already. We really don't want to have to deal with the Bruins too. Uh, but I think that's a Nashville versus Boston final. I think Nashville does take it.
So, okay, yeah. I mean, I see where you're coming from, but I think Vegas being the underdogs will have like no pressure on them. They'll be able
Which we said before.
Yeah, so they'll be able to take it to the finals. I think because Fleury has that experience of being in the playoffs. Sure, I mean he's had up and down performances, but he came in for Murray back when they were on the Penguins and performed fine. I think he can do it again, especially with the team in front of him. They're all pretty damn good players. I think they'll surprise some people and get in.
Yeah, I think Fleury last year shook off a lot of the nervousness and whatever was bugging him in years past, and was really able to shut it down. And if he can play like that, then they really have something out in Vegas. But I just don't know, because to kind of circle it all the way back to when we started off the show with the Vizina predictions, Pekka Rinne and Marc-Andre Fleury, they're just two different animals.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, I'm picking Vegas to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. And then from the East, I think Boston is going to take it as much as I hate them too.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take the West to win the Stanley Cup. So, Vegas.
All right, so whoever may or may not be listening and decide to stick around for what looks like to be an hour and 56 minutes in, we finally came to a prediction. It's either going to be Nashville over Boston or it's going to be Las Vegas over Boston.
Yeah, so, and we'll see how we actually have done or our progress next time.
Yeah, it should be a fun ride. To whoever did decide to listen, we thank you and hope that you'll like whatever content we put out, share it, recommend it to friends. We really don't know a lot of people, so we're hoping that a lot of people will kind of help churn this out and put it into a more public eye. I think we're hoping that we get 100 listeners, and that would kind of be a reach. But hey, reach for the stars, right?
Yeah, we just want to
and not the Dallas Stars.
Have a conversation, figure out what people like. Listen to us, what people think, if we could ever get feedback somehow.
Yeah, I think it kind of will determine A, if we keep doing it, B, if we incorporate other sports, or if we have enough of an audience that we can stay within this lane. And that's all part of finding out. I think one thing that we gained is we now both have one episode of podcasting experience under our belt. So it can only go up from here. 2 hours of content editing is probably not going to happen on this one. Truth be told, I think if we can sync up our tracks, and we're looking pretty good. But this hopefully is just the start to something extremely fun. So hopefully this is just chapter 1. That being said, we'll keep doing shows throughout the playoffs, hopefully. And that'll be our trial period. We'll see what results we yield. And that being said, anything else?
No, thanks for listening and staying till the end.
All right. And with that being said, we've done some award talk, done some Flyers suck talk, and we've done some playoff talk. So this has been In the Tunnel, Season 1, Episode 1. Not that we're doing seasons, but it's Episode 1. And hopefully you'll tune in for Episode 2. So thank you very much. I'm Jeremy, and that's been Sean. And hopefully we'll catch you guys on the next episode.